Welcome back to a difficult video, where a aging metal and rock kind of nutcase delves into something completely different. And this is the world of kind of experimental or just mental, avant-garde, kind of atmospheric soundscapery, and it's taken me a little while to digest the works of Ethan Lee McCarthy, and I say this in a positive fashion because it's always good to be challenged, to step outside one's kind of comfort zones. So let me go on to explain. Ethan Lee McCarthy is a multidisciplinary artist. He creates audio and visual work. He's from Denver, Colorado. He has his roots in underground DIY music scenes, and he's been kind of going about this for the last 2 decades, playing at significant festivals and reaching positive acclaim, and of course healthy doses of criticism along the way. And his musical output ranges from sort of controlled chaos through to ambient soundscapes, released under the sort of names of Primitive Man, and of course his own name. And his visual art is created digitally. It involves kind of collages and canvases and sort of work distilling the horrors and the beauty of modern day America. And it's been quite a journey. I found a couple of bits and pieces of his on his Bandcamp, and an album I'd focus on is Beauty in All Things. This is a 14-track affair, possibly not popular at the family Christmas dinner, but it is notable all the same. As a composer and musician myself, I do like to introduce particular styles of ambience. You can probably gather looking around me, I like my stuff dark and horror, and we all know the sounds of creeping violins and distortions and knocks and things that go bump in the night. Well, this is kind of all of those, but not just embedded in the world of kind of horror. This is completely multifaceted. There are kind of bells, there is statics, there is distortion, there are kind of pops and pauses where you'd expect audio to continue, but it's snatched away from you, and then returns all of a sudden. There are some interesting track names, Torn Apart and Burnt Within the Idiot Grave, which kind of starts, it's very dark and knocking. If you've ever seen, I forget the name of that film, where the gentleman was kind of buried alive, and that was the entirety of the film. It gave off those kind of vibes. Slightly more bizarrely, there's covering up evidence of homicide in a recurring dream, which kind of matches some of my recurring dreams. So when you put all of this together, you kind of are questioning whether this is, art, whether this is just absolute, madness. Is it music? In what level of talent does it you need to acquire to produce this? And I think these are some of the criticisms that are unfairly leveled at these types of artists. I've not come across many. I would say, quite honestly, this is my third foray into this kind of music. But there is instrumentation involved. There is a sense of melody, even in some of the longer, protracted, atmospheric parts. If you listen carefully, I think that in some aspects, and bearing in mind my background, I'm completely uneducated in this genre, but I think in some aspects these are compositions that are obviously longer over a period of time to listen to, but where a musician might be focused in something like 4/4 and a number of beats, this type of style, is zoomed out, and I don't know, so 4/4 would become, I don't know, like 1 minute over 1 minute. The way things sort of develop, you could be accused of thinking that it's kind of like, it's just white noise and things knocking about and what have you. But when you zoom out, And zooming out is quite a meditative practice, and I think that's important. But when you zoom out on this work, you get the sense of structure that would normally be like more recognizable and more familiar. So these artists have something that is kind of uniquely special in the way that they produce this kind of work and put it together. This does take nuance, even though to the average listener, the nuance is often overlooked. And I think that is what is special about these avant-garde, experimental noise projects, is that they make you think, and they challenge the, I suppose, the human psyche's proclivity to seek immediate pattern recognition and enjoyment, and ultimately the dopamine hit that comes with listening to music. I mentioned a meditative kind of element to this. Viewers might know or have seen things recorded such as like brown noise, white noise, pink noise, music at certain kilohertz, and different kind of binaural layers, which are helpful to some people, I mean, each to their own individual preference, with self-reflection, meditative practices, or just plain chilling out. I mean, all of those are valid. And there is also that kind of vibe within the album that I listened to, Beauty in All Things. There was some interesting jumps here about John the Apostle was as chaotic as it was kind of beautiful in places, and it's not uncomfortable in a bad way, and it takes some adjustment. And I know some people as friends that live and breathe this stuff, and unfortunately I am perhaps too old and too set in my ways to be able to create a playlist of these things that would last a day in the same way that I would with any other form of music. But that wouldn't necessarily stop me for seeing someone like Ethan Lee McCarthy live. Having discussed all of that, I can quite happily tell you that Ethan Lee McCarthy is indeed playing live, and it will be at the Black Heart in Camden Town on Monday, March the 11th from 7 p.m. It can be quite an interesting experience if you're new to the scene or haven't heard too much of this kind of style. Definitely would recommend it as a thought-provoking, challenging, and actually quite seasoned introduction to this style of music. And of course, if you're a fan of a diehard fan of these kind of works, then it's an absolute treat. And just to close, without these ambitious kind of boundary-breaking experimental artists, we wouldn't have the things we see and hear in film. We wouldn't have those transitions in our favorite songs. I suppose we wouldn't even have bits and pieces that we see in advertising. It's sound, it's noise, it's movement. It's what keeps our brains focused and engaged, and the roots of commonality, the evolvement to the commonality of the music and sounds that we find automatically acceptable have their roots in experimentation. As with every other discipline, whether that's science, medicine, music is exactly the same, if not equal, and more important. And that's all for me. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you can get to the Black Heart, go and see Ethan Lee McCarthy.